right, hello everyone. Welcome to another edition of Movie Review Men. I am your co-host, Claude, and on the other side we have
Jeff Johnson.
All right, the movie that we are going to introduce today is part of the Warner Brothers Super lineup, and it was interesting because the movie was released during this week, and they also had a big promo of all the big, Warner Brothers productions that are going to be coming out. Although it's going to be a big year for Warner Brothers, the title of the movie is called Little Things. Little Things is, I guess you would call it sort of like a neo-noir, and it follows a cop by the name of Joe Deacon, who is a former LA cop who's hanging on to a law enforcement career, literally, literally on threads. He's called to LA just to do something routine, and he ends up basically getting invited by up and coming detective by the name of Jim Baxter, a detective who, like himself, except he's on a real good track to being like not just an excellent detective. Yeah, he's a holy roller, which fits into his office culture. And he basically, they're both investigating a serial killer that is, it's taking place in 1990s Los Angeles. So you sort of have the older cop, younger cop dynamic. And again, they are tracking down a serial killer in Los Angeles, the city of angels.
Yeah, and it's hard for a person of, I'll just say of my age, although we're about the same age, Claude, to accept the fact that a 90s film is a period piece. I have to keep doing the math and keep saying, oh, dang, that is a period piece. Mm-hmm. But it's a period piece. First I kept saying, wow, look at all those big telephones. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it's 90s. So that's true. But it's also, I would say, Claude, if you will, it's a kind of film that feels 90s-ish, right? Because this particular police drama, it's a serial killer. It's a serial killer detective mystery. Mm-hmm. Trying to not just it's not a heist film. It's not a police chase film. It's about a serial killer film, which we had a whole bunch of those back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And seeing Denzel Washington play this, as you mentioned, the guy hanging on to the last threads of his police crime solving career, while another person's ascending, but they're both equally tightly wound detectives. That perhaps this next detective is perhaps just the next generation of a far too tightly wound detective. And as the story unfolds, they may both be, the old generation, the next generation of two tightly wound detectives, and you got to ask yourself, what is it about this particular police department that they keep getting the same kind of detective? Even that starts to roll into the mystery and suspense and tension behind this story. I guess I wasn't paying attention enough. I'm not exactly sure where they are. They're in somewhere California. Denzel Washington is somewhere lesser California because he's working way past his career time now. He's on the downslope, and he's in law enforcement in some small, much further away town still in California, and he's drawn back to the big city. I'm not sure which one. He's drawn back to big city.
In Kern, I think it was Kern, California, and I think that's around. I don't know if it's near Bakersfield, but he's not even. He's also a sheriff, a deputy. He's part of the sheriff.
He's a deputy sheriff.
Technically, not in the city.
Yeah. He's not in the city, and even that's significant to the story in the sense that he's clearly being put out. He's been put out based off of a case that haunts him, and for some reason he's drawn back in, as you mentioned, just because he's low on the totem pole, he gets drawn back into the very precinct that he washed out of, and is drawn back into his obsessive case. So it's that kind of tension and drama. You're given three very intense actors playing these roles. Well, Denzel Washington isn't maybe necessarily known for being intense. He's just a great actor who can play an intense character. It's also interesting watching him play a character again, if you will, this far gone, old, out of shape, but not out of shape in his mind, and not out of shape in his how much he's possessed by wanting to try to solve, just solve one more case, and perhaps if he gets lucky, solve the case that got away. So it's powerful seeing him in that role. Rami Malek, if I'm saying his name right, Rami is a very intense dude. He's been in a lot of films. We are over anxiously waiting for the release of the James Bond film, which has him as a villain. We just got to keep waiting because they keep waiting for the release of the Bond film. And here he is, playing a very intense character. And then poor Jared Leto. Will they ever let him play a librarian in the future? Will that ever happen? A school bus driver? That's just not going to happen. They keep typecast as the crazy psycho.
Unless he's a school bus driver by day, psycho killer by night.
There's the casting is leading you one way, ladies and gentlemen. There's not too much behind that. I wonder if he's a suspect. Okay, that's no spoiler. It's Jared Leto in a serial killer a detective story. I think he's a suspect. Yes, that's right. He's a suspect. That's clear. I like the movie's intensity. It kept you pulled in and drawn in. There was that tension of constantly wondering what's going to happen next. The pace did kind of feel like, again, it reminded you of the very time period that we're in, but in a cutting to the chase review, good, not great, with such great actors, which pulling that old school type of tension that I just kept feeling for myself, good, not great. Good individual performances, good individual sequences that keeping the rope tight, keeping the tension, and you're just like, oh man, what's gonna happen next? Don't do that. That's a terrible life choice. Don't go there. Don't go around that corner. Don't trust that person. It's gonna go bad for you. I just wish the payoff was there. I felt like I didn't get all of the payoff that I wanted from a story like that, or stories that, again, since it's strung us back to the 90s, of the stories that were like that, because it seemed like we were in Psycho Killer Central back in the 90s, and the titles had to have 2 words. The little things. There's too many words. They didn't they didn't follow strict attention to the 90s. They didn't have Fatal Attraction, Lethal Love, deadly dungarees. They should have just gone all out on that. They kind of lost their way when they decided to go with the title. So that's my first reaction about it, Claude.
Okay. My reaction, it was when I saw the trailers, I definitely had high expectations. Number one, because as you mentioned before, it's a super high powered cast.
Yes.
You got Denzel, you got Rami Malek, you got Jared Leto, and it also occupies a space where we have seen a lot of amazing, detective stories.
Sure.
And so I was a little cautious because I was like, okay, I was a little, again, big expectation from Warner Brothers. The Wonder Woman a little bit of a letdown. So I'm like, okay, I'm being a little cautious. And my whole, I guess my whole thing is that this had like a lot of ingredients that we love about, these movies. Takes place in the City of Angels. You have the a cop who's sort of like haunted by, either a woman who was killed or some innocence that was taken away from somebody, and they are forever on this crusade. And so many stories sort of have that as the ingredient. We also have the older cop who is not necessarily mentoring the younger cop, but maybe is also to a certain degree trying to make him wiser, protect him from certain things. And we also have so it was super packed, and I was saying, okay, maybe I'm not expecting necessarily. I was hoping for the best thing because of the cast, but I was reasonably cautious by saying I cannot make my expectations too high, because they have movies that take place in California. I mean, just different ones. You can name a bunch of them. You have Seven, which has the older cop, younger cop dynamic.
Yes.
You have Vertigo. You have sort of like a cop taken to the edge, trying to, solve a mystery even after he's been institutionalized. You had other ones like Manhunter, which takes place in the 80s, where you see the character who basically was brought on the edge of being, insane, but he still needed to solve a crime. And just a whole bunch of different things. So I was really saying, okay, let me, it's a big setup to say, hopefully something fascinating. I didn't know they're gonna hopefully hit it out of the park because of the cast, but just give me something interesting. And there were a couple of things that I was able to rock with, but just overall, I honestly just felt, to me, the movie was just there. It wasn't particularly, it had some interesting things in there, but it wasn't particularly like an excellent or a good movie. It was just sort of there. Now, what were some of the things that I liked? I sort of like the way, okay, I sort of, they did a little change with the sort of like with the dynamic, usually, again, a dynamic is a cop that's about to retire with a new cop. You basically have a cop that has been placed on the edge, who very much probably, in his mind, would like to come back to LA and be a cop again.
Sure.
And you have a younger one who's basically on the track to becoming a successful cop. I also sort of like the fact that, sort of like whatever happened to Denzel Washington's character, everybody just sort of reacted to it. It was, you didn't necessarily, you knew something happened. There's a little bit of the ageism. So just, being a person in my 50s in a work environment, I definitely sort of related to the whole idea that he was sort of treated like, okay, you don't want to get too, at a certain age, people think, okay, he's treated almost as if like he's some type of a disease. If you have Denzel Washington, as your partner, you need to wash yourself, inoculate yourself or something,
right?
Because whatever he has is going to be contagious, which is the way they sort of deal with older people at the place. He even meets up with a cop, Sal Rizzoli, who basically, he was a partner of his back in the day, and the guy's talking about the new cops basically saying, "Oh, we don't even go out for drinks anymore," or whatever. Everyone just sort of, keeps to their own business. It's a different culture altogether.
Right, it's a different world.
And that's just the thing. Yeah, back in the day, people were, you had your work family where you would drink and stuff, and now everyone is just doing their own little thing.
Even while the stakes are the same as the supposed back in the day. So first off, like I said, the movie is already back in the day, and then they're talking about it some day before that day. That was Denzel's time, and then they've got Denzel Washington clearly playing, his age. They're not trying to make him look younger in any way. Okay, he's, we open with him literally put out the pasture. He's living alone. Kids are grown and gone. Marriage is broken up and lost. He's living way out of LA. He's way out in the country, but not just the country. It's got a kind of junky front yard. The yard isn't well kept. big garbage can sitting out in the front of the yard. It looks like that doesn't never move. So he's been literally put out to pasture. You know, he's a deputy sheriff being given little piddly work. In fact, they open it in a funny way, as I recall, where is investigating something, and then when they pull back, it's really small time. It's a really small time police action. It was nothing. It was no kind of detective work at all.
Yeah, actually, that was a funny joke too. Yeah, I
right. It was funny, and when they opened up and they get back to the office, it was almost like his boss was sending him to go sweep, go sweep up.
Yeah.
But when he sent him to sweep up, somehow his boss didn't have the insight or clarity to realize that he was sending him right back into the hornet's nest. It wasn't clear to me why his boss didn't get how fraught it would be to send his deputy right back into the jurisdiction for which his last fateful case fell apart and the beginning of the end of his career as a story detective. That part wasn't clear to me why his boss didn't get it. And then it just elements kept conspiring against Denzel, that he couldn't just hurry up and go back home. That they were going to keep having him, walk right into the precinct that he washed out of because of that one case that went too far. The one case, the one villain that got away, and he never got over it, and it ruined the rest of his life. So that part of it, that parallel piece of everyone knowing and us trying to find out what was his demise, and the fact, the buildup of finding that not only is it important to figure out what happened in his life that made his career fall apart, but it seems like he's like an addict. It's this one case that he's fallen into has now restirred up all of those feelings in him, and restirred up the mania that caused his career to go away in the first place. And now, can he be a helpful partner to this current young detective as he's becoming obsessed with solving this prior crime? I guess the thing about it is that as strong as a cast as this was, and as strong as the individual performances and individual scenes were, they didn't all build up to be an excellent film, right? We were given all of the elements. The element I just told you about his backstory, the question about the tightly wound new kid who's willing to risk working with the old, washed out guy who went mad and lost everything in his life in pursuit of a previous case. He has to now see if he cannot, get the best out of this old man, but not go mad himself. Well, again, individual performances were nice, but the whole driving to madness component just wasn't as credible to me. I just didn't get it. I did not believe that Rami Malek moved from too tightly wound but one to succeed cop all the way to the madness. I keep wanting to talk about like LA Confidential, okay? Again, another period piece, right? Which again, a little bit easier for us to accept as period piece, right? We can say, oh yeah, those other people are old and it's referring to them. Now, this 90s film where I don't have to accept that 90s makes me old. But the LA Confidential was definitely talking about whatever, late 50s LA and maybe the golden age of Hollywood, and a detective who would rather be a advisor to the Hollywood movies than do his detective job really well. And then also, I guess we were introduced with the super gung-ho, straight-laced detective. I'm missing up all the plots of LA Confidential. It's truly excellent. That's another review. Watch that film. But watching, the corruption of the different characters, right? There are many stories, as you mentioned, especially in the 90s. There were many movies made in the 90s about the old cop, the new goody two-shoe cop, and then an attempt to, in order to solve this crime, the young goody two-shoe cop gets corrupted.
Okay.
Right? Gets either driven to evil or driven to madness. I just felt like this film didn't it wasn't as compelling. The drive to the drive and change that the old curmudgeon Denzel Washington, I wasn't convinced that he drove Rami Malek to this condition.
You absolutely, you hit the nail right on the head, because I mean, you know, because of the, yeah, that's exactly what I was going to point out. It was interesting though. It was interesting when you were talking about, you know, LA Confidential. You talked about two of the cops, and I was expecting you to talk about the cop played by Russell Crowe, who definitely fits into someone haunted by their past to rescue women who's pushed on the brink. So I was just like,
That's
dude,
right.
you're right there. Just one more detective. But you know what?
Go ahead.
But
Go ahead.
a movie made in the '90s, and as you mentioned, you know, this one embodied the era where all, you know, a bunch of these movies, you know, were made. Just adding a couple, you definitely hit on to me. That was a big major thing that I felt in terms of this. Before I start criticizing, there's a couple other things I want to I guess to bring up. The whole idea in terms of how they dealt with Denzel's character as a character who was haunted. Okay, we see characters who are haunted all the time. This one sort of had just a little more to it. I think they, in my opinion, they went over the top with some of the things that they did, but I did not necessarily mind that they went over the top, because I think it sort of fit his story. I mean, he went from, you know, one scene where he's sort of talking to the corpse, you know, as if the corpse is alive. And then you sort of see it's like, okay. And then you have a couple other scenes where you're like, okay, this I can see what's wrong now, you know, because he definitely is somebody who is, you know, who is haunted. And
yeah,
he went from
talking to the corpse, which seems quirky, but compelling. Like I said, the film was full of powerful individual scenes. Yeah. Right. And that was a powerful individual scene where he was in the morgue and he's talking to the corpse. It's like, oh, okay, we got this super eccentric detective with eccentric ways, but he delivers and he spots things, all the way to where they actually have him have a vision. So you're like, come on, people, both? We're gonna have both?
Yeah. And again, you know, I would have said that would have been, you know, over the top, and I'm sure it put certain people off. I was willing to roll with it because, in a way, I'm like, you know, when characters are on these intense hunts or these intense things, I honestly give them a lot of latitude, because you're sort of hoping to get their shit together. You're hoping that they're able to, but it's a fascinating ride when somebody loses. Watching
them lose it is a fascinating ride. I will point out, it's not a spoiler, but it's something I'm confused about, ladies and gentlemen. When you watch it, maybe you'll figure it out if you choose to watch it. Is when he goes to having visions of the case that's haunting him, and so he's visualizing the victims. Okay, I'm with that. But he's visualizing the victims in a really cheap, raunchy hotel with prostitutes in the hotel. It's a hotel where the guy behind the desk asks him, "Do you want me to send a prostitute to you?" And he knew he was a cop, and he still offered to send prostitutes up to him. And so Denzel's in that room, and he's actually looking at photos of the victims on the wall. So now we're like, okay, he's obsessing over this. He kept photographs with him, or he pulled the records, and he's in this cheesy hotel when he didn't have to stay in a cheesy hotel. He was invited to stay with his old school cop friend, and he chose on his own to check into this cheesy hotel. So now it's more tension. We're like, man, you could get mugged. You're not even from the town anymore. Is there something wrong with you? Why are you in such a terrible hotel? And then he puts the pictures up on the wall. Okay, now we're still rocking with it. We're like, oh, he's obsessed over the case.
You saw movies in the '90s. You saw the common pictures on the wall.
Yeah, very '90s, putting the pictures on the wall. Maybe next he's gonna get string. You draw the string to tie the clues between each other. But then he immediately rolls from looking at actual pictures into fantasizing about the victims, right? And then I'm like, okay, I'm all right. It's not great, but okay. But one of the victims was what? Looked like she was sucking his toes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute. One, she's a victim. Two, you're in a prostitute hotel. Is it actually a prostitute with them, or is it just he's dreaming about the victim? And then I wasn't sure, and I'm confused. And that's gross if he's having a dream about the victim that he feels guilty about. So why is she?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yes, go ahead.
So it's part of the part that just, editing or something, the way that they did that, it was part of the thing that messed with this compelling drive from us going from he's just being drawn back in, he's forced to come back to his office. It's supposed to be an intensive build of his mania. And then we're like, well, can he help this guy solve the case as he's getting more maniacal? And can the young person not get drawn into the mania? It just wasn't, it wasn't as compelling. I wasn't convinced in this journey of mania, especially don't put him in a whorehouse. Have him in a clear place where there was no way that there would be any other woman in his room. And then I'd be like, oh, that's clearly freaking out fantasy. But for 2 seconds, I had to say, did he just order a hooker?
I was wondering the same thing, but you know what? Again, we have these stories where these people are sort of like, this is the one that got away, and one sort of looks into the whole fixation in terms of finding that person. And the whole damsel of distress is a very, is one of those things where it's like, I wonder if any of the detective actually want to, and like I said, it's unsettling. It's not. I didn't necessarily take points off from it, but it was just like, okay, this is really weird. It lets you know where the character is. Was it necessary? Not necessarily, but I would honestly say if it shows you something different about the character, I'm willing to sort of say, okay, let's see where this goes. And it added a different, it added a certain, again, sleaziness to his character a little bit. And honestly,
which was fine. Was fine, like you said, because then it's like, okay, so now.
I mean, my whole thing is, wouldn't it have been interesting, like if the Rami Malek character, knocked on his hotel room, and so I'm doing it. I mean, there's a certain point, but you know what? I mean, so
because in all detective stories like this,
the hunted thing, I was okay with that journey. It wasn't necessarily, but not 100% cool, but I was there. I just sort of went with it.
Right.
And I am incomplete. Like Laser got, just complete agreement with the whole, Rami Malek character, how this affected him. Because among other things is that it seemed like Denzel's character was doing most of the heavy lifting in terms of investigating the mystery. Number one.
Yeah. Like
number
kept
two,
showing, for example, they kept showing Malek.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
For example, I'll just amplifying point. They kept showing Malek have really bad success with his forensic CI department, and Denzel having excellent success with the coroner.
Mm-hmm.
No big deal, but that's what was in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Mm-hmm. Denzel is awesome at getting his coroner to do stuff, and the story unveils later how awesome he is at getting his coroner to do stuff for him. Right? Mm-hmm. But they show Rami Malek just having one bad luck, can't get his CI guy to give him what he wants, his whatever CI stands for, crime investigation. Analyze the analysis geek to help him out, and Rami Malek just gets more and more upset. Again, if that's supposed to be his journey to madness, not compelling.
Not compelling, and it's like they sort of allude to the fact that Denzel Washington's character is that Deke is willing to take shortcuts, and then he's trying to take shortcuts. It's not working. But you know what? When you've seen other movies where characters are descended into madness, that's where it changes. You again going back to something like Seven, which is a very high stakes. Or again, Manhunter, like I mentioned, and even the character, again, Russell Crowe's character in LA Confidential, how things,
Live and Die in LA. Live and Die in LA, which again is not the same kind of cop movie. But again, you still have all these things where, the police officer, descends into madness or descends into becoming evil, or they're more compelling. At least in this one, all detective movies like this, where this one is more like as a mystery. And so when you give us a mystery inside of our hero, that's good. That draws you in. right? It's bad enough that we're trying to find out who the criminal is, but then you're making us question the hero who has skills, you know, who's, oh, look at that clue. And did you check that? And if you check that and check this, then you'll find that. And you're like, oh yeah, this is a good detective. I'm watching what he can do. And the young kid has some skills, but he doesn't have the same skills as the old man. But the old man has some skeletons in his closet. And then they introduce to you the villain. And you're like, oh, this dude is bad. And why do we know he's bad? Sadly, we know he's bad because it's Jared Leto. Sorry, Jared. Work with your agent. Cut your hair. Smile more.
They needed, and there were a bunch of things. I mean, just in terms of number one, I did not, again, believe that this sent him to madness. And then the other thing you expect is just, the sort of like the chess play between the killer and that, and there wasn't anything there. And I mean, I guess it's become a cliche, so I'm fine if it's a straight procedural, but at least, okay, yeah, we see Jared Leto is clever enough to sort of, in a way, make the cops that when they're coming after him, they set up this whole thing. But again, so many different movies where they're able to control the situation, take the cops off their game, and there wasn't too much for him to do. I mean, this was literally, it was literally like a scaled back. There's been more stuff in episodes of Law and Order: Criminal Intent than in this movie. Where the villain takes the cops off their game more effectively, more deeper, more. You're at home saying, no, don't do it, don't go down that road. Yeah. Or you're wondering, where is he? There's got to be a setup. The villain is super smart, super creepy. Our heroes think that they got this all under control, but they ain't got it under control. They've just been better, more compelling. Yeah. There wasn't a lot that was done. I mean, and I'm fine if you're going straight for a procedural, but the thing that you sort of have set up the audience for would have been, just something that was, just a little higher stakes. So, I mean, I'm not, again, you didn't have to have some chess game where you have a Bible quoting mass murderer saying, seek and ye shall find. And, I'm going to put riddles around the place and all this type of stuff.
Yes.
But you know what, just something that was a little more solid. They were dealing with the frustration that deep down in their heart of hearts, they knew this person was guilty, and they were struggling to get the little pieces that were going to the little things that would get to him. And honestly, I mean, there were a couple of, there were a few things I thought, again, I'm not trying to repeat myself, a few things that I thought, the movie was okay with, but overall, it wasn't, just to me, it wasn't very good. It was just there.
It's kind of like, it's a film full of procedural detective movies, but just the little things of procedural detective movies.
The bare minimum.
Right. The interrogation that's intense, the wise detective. There's very few people who can be wiser than Denzel. The intense young kid. Wow, Rami Malek is so intense. Are his eyes going to pop directly out of his head?
Yeah, it's what's really interesting is that he definitely has sort of like this fascinating character actor face who at the same time can carry a movie. So he's in a really good sweet spot in terms of acting roles. So
sure,
it's so he's in a real, just in my opinion, just sort of like a real good place. And again, you were just hoping for, okay, what's him off his game? We see that he's married. A couple of things don't necessarily go his way, and then we're supposed to believe that this leads to what happens at the end.
Correct.
And it's like,
and it doesn't really.
There were a lot of steps. If you've seen other movies, you've seen characters brought to the brink.
Correct.
We've seen William Peterson did it in 2 movies. A Manhunter and To Live and Die in L.A., which was also on my list. I didn't say it, but I was like, definitely William Peterson did this. I mean, what's that name? William Peterson did it 2 times. You know, again, Brad Pitt in Vertigo, even going back old school, James Stewart, Mr. It's a Wonderful Life, in Vertigo. I mean, come on. You
You're
know,
going way back in the crate. It's a fundamental of cop movies in general, even the Untouchables.
yeah.
Took Elliot Ness from being, and they was literal about it. Sean Connery is like, you know, if you're going to come to Chicago, you got to do it the Chicago way. And so Elliot Ness had to change, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in this type of procedural, it's got to be with the tension. It's we're so scared we might act crazy. The audience, like this dude is super extra evil. He could be around the corner at any time. He's right out in front of you, and you can't catch him. Maybe we, the audience, are willing to go crazy.
Yeah.
Right? And that didn't really happen. You just had elements. You had the little things that were great in these films, and not all of them. You had the intense interview scene. You had the Denzel Washington. I was going to say the third piece is that you had the spooky villain. Jared Leto does an excellent job of being a spooky villain. And I'll just tease him one more time, one last time. His performances are not terrible. There are a lot of fanboys out there from the comic book universe who just hate his role in the no, I won't say it.
Suicide
Squad. Hey, Jared Leto is not the reason why Suicide Squad isn't good. Sorry, folks.
Okay.
No, it wasn't his fault. He was as creepy, and he gave you a different flavor of Joker than you ever seen before, and it's not a bad flavor. It was totally unique Joker, and he was creepy and whatever. Just unfortunately, in the wrong film. I liked him in Blade Runner 2045. They gave us a new twist on the something about Blade Runner, that all the evil people who create the robots all have vision problems. I'm not smart enough to understand why that's so, but watch Blade. We covered that in our Blade Runner review, ladies and gentlemen. So he's a blind, creepy dude who creates the androids in Blade Runner. He's obviously evil. I mean, you look at me like, hey, it's Jared Leto. You must be evil. Yes. Sorry. He's creepy and evil. Again, he can't see, so he uses the little robots to see, and then he's gross, too. He's evil and gross. But there was nothing wrong. That performance was pretty good, too. He was a good, evil, gross dude. These things are not his fault. One of these days, I don't know, maybe 7 times the charm, Jared. I guess that's what it is. You're just going to keep playing creepy, evil people until they finally put you in a successful, creepy, evil movie. Blade Runner was good. One of these times, it's going to be your day to be creepy, evil, and the movie be good.
Well, look, he you know what? He's considered an actor, so we don't have to wish him nothing. I mean, he's gonna be fine.
You say he's crying all the way to the bank?
I mean,
he's spooky all the way to the bank.
No, but
take my money. It's me, Jared.
All these people won Academy Awards. He did win. I think he won Academy Award for Dallas Buyers Club and all that. And just to take it back, I know you mentioned the Suicide Squad. We are not trying to crap on Warner Brothers products, because I will be there to watch Suicide Squad 2.
We will.
James Gunn. But I'm just let me just wrap up this point. Going back to the journey that Rami Malek's character was taking.
Sure.
I always remember bringing up another movie now. I always remember Heat, where Robert De Niro and Al Pacino are talking, and it's like, okay, what kind of a life can you have? Because I have a life where I'm getting ready to leave things. A matter of 5 minutes, I'm ready to go. So if you were a cop and you have a marriage, how are you expected to keep up with me? Because there's always this element in terms of bringing the cops to the brink that, in essence, one has to become or almost become like married to the villain.
Yep.
And that was definitely not the case. When Rami Malek had to do the stakeout, it honestly looked like he was doing the stakeout for the first time in his life. Like, oh, this is part of the job too. Damn, and it leads to a crucial thing. But I think we basically, just I guess we could probably bring this to. I think we wrapped up everything, because I think we're in agreement, and overall, had high expectations, for the movie. There were certain things that I thought were cool. Like individual, like you said, individually, certain performances, Rami Malek and Denzel Washington, uh, were good. I also want to give a shout out to Michael Hyatt, who played the I guess he's sort of like the crime or forensics investigator. Um, she's had a role playing,
Yes.
Barksdale's mother in The Wire and everything. So it was good. It was good. It was good to see her. And you had, you had a pretty good, supporting cast. Christopher Bauer playing Sal Rizzoli gives a little bit of a flavor of what Denzel's character was like and what he's sort of facing. He's sort of like a foil, the same career-minded cop foil to what Denzel is. But overall, there were some good things there were some good things in the movie. I think it could have done something really, amazing, but it did not stand out. It wasn't, it was just okay,
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. But that's the little things. That's what we think about it. Let us know what you think about it. And we'll be back to review another film next time. I'm Jeff Johnson.
And I am Claude Faitier.
Talk to you soon.